was key of G. Wait, you're saying who is she? Hey there, New York town. As you know, I'm not from here, local legend like some here. Yeah, but now that I've come here, it's where I wanna be. Love that music you're playing, got me stopping and swaying. You can go, but I'm staying, it's where I wanna be. Let me hear some Louis Armstrong licks, basic boogie in the mix. Fat cat cat away for kicks, and leave some room for me. I said leave some room for me. Play that big fat E flat and make my heart go bam, 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 bam. Someone's playing my song here, telling me I belong here. Nothing bad, it feels wrong here. I'm where I wanna be. I'm where I wanna be. I'm where I wanna be. It's like a trip to the moon, except 1,000 times better. This girl may swoon, and if she does, I say let her. Everything I've seen today is singing. Welcome, Kitty, your H-O-M-E. Yes, my goose has been cooked now. Here I'm recipe hooked now. 'Cause the last time I looked now, I'm where I wanna be. Keep your cans in Miami's, LA's Oscars and Grammys. Start unpacking my jammies. I'm where I wanna be. I'm where I wanna be. I'm where I wanna be. I'm where I wanna be.
Welcome to another edition of Quick Black Poet Facts. Today is all about Claude McKay. Claude McKay was born on September 15th, 1889 in Clarendon Parish, Jamaica, and was the youngest of 11 children. McKay excelled academically and won a scholarship to the prestigious Miko Teachers College in Kingston, Jamaica, where he studied from 1907 to 1911. He is best known for his poetry, particularly his collection Songs of Jamaica, published in 1912, which celebrated Jamaican culture and landscapes. McKay played a significant role in the Harlem Renaissance, a cultural and artistic movement among African Americans in the 1920s. His work contributed to the shaping of the movement's literary landscape. One of his most famous poems, If We Must Die, released in 1919, reflects McKay's response to racial violence and oppression. It became an anthem for African Americans facing discrimination and violence during the early 20th century. McKay also wrote novels including Home to Harlem, published in 1928, and Banjo, published in 1929, which explored themes of race, identity, and social injustice. Home to Harlem was the first novel by an African American to become a bestseller in the United States. McKay was politically active and engaged with various ideologies, including socialism and communism. He spent time traveling and advocating for social justice causes both in the United States and abroad. Due to his political beliefs and activism, McKay faced persecution in the United States. During the Red Scare, he eventually left for Europe in the late 1920s, spending significant time in England and France. McKay's autobiography, A Long Way From Home, published in 1937, provides insight into his life experiences and perspectives on race, politics, and identity. Claude McKay's contributions to literature and social justice activism continue to be celebrated today. He remains a significant figure in African American and Caribbean literary history, known for his powerful poetry and novels that confront issues of race, identity, and social justice. As always, my name is Sparrow, and thank you for watching.
Going no contact is the same as what we used to call estrangement, just a new.
So I find it really interesting to see people of the Gen X and Boomer generations actually engaging genuinely with this subject. Go back and watch that whole video. It's actually a response to somebody else who kind of had issues grappling with the fact that a lot of millennials and Gen Z, I mean, from millennials onward, I think, we are generations that are, I would say, not afraid to go no contact with our parents, but it's more than that. It's not even about just whether we're afraid or not. So in that stitch, Fabulous 50s, who I think is a wonderful creator, I want to say that it's very noteworthy when somebody is able to extract themselves from the dominant thought patterns of their generation, because the generations that we grow up in do form us, right? And it can be hard to break out of that conditioning. So it's very much a testament to somebody's curiosity about the world and their intelligence, their emotional intelligence and all that. But in that stitch, she's saying, going no contact is not a trend. It's just another way to say estrangement. And I want to say, for the record, as of a few months ago, I started using the term orphans of estrangement to describe those of us who have gone no contact with our family of origin, and therefore have no familial support, didn't have it when we were with them, and don't have it now, whether we're young adults, grown adults, whatever. We just don't have family, and there's a specific nexus of problems and challenges that come with that. For those of you who can talk to your parents and you call them sometimes and they are supportive and they listen to you, that's not something that everybody has. But anyway, moving forward, I think that it's really interesting, the conversation about understanding that I thought toxic meant poisonous, and yeah, it does, meant deadly, right? And she's saying, yeah, it does, but you have to understand what we didn't really get until recently is that being neglectful, right? Emotional abusive is just as dangerous, just as bad for your health as being physically abusive, right? And one of the things that I really want to touch on here in this conversation, because this is just one of the things that I like to remind people, is that the problem of boomers and Gen Z, again, Fabulous 50s kind of points out the fact that they were raised believing that you decide who you want your children to be, and then you do everything you can to make them be that person, which is a fundamentally impossible way to go about child rearing, because children are people. They're born people. They just don't know how to exist in their bodies yet. They just don't know the rules of society yet, right? And those are the things that you teach them, but you don't teach them who to be. That's a horrible thing to try to do to somebody. But of course, I understand how previous generations were kind of taught that that was their responsibility, and that was what was going to be a kindness to them in the long run, right? What I want to say is that it's colonization. What you're coming up against and what we have been moving away from is colonization. Colonization and its economic system, capitalism, hates children and sees them as a resource and something to be formed into a unit that supports industry, that supports capitalist markets, that supports just whatever. It sees your children, it primes you to see your children as things that you must form in order to support the colonization, the colonial project, basically. The way that you tell them to relate to other people, the values that you tell them to enshrine, the mannerisms, the way that you want them to dress, the way that you do or don't want them to express themselves, the way that you do or don't want them to love, the ideals of shame and guilt. A lot of boomer aged parents who are very frustrated at this no contact thing have this idea of well, you don't deserve to just leave us, you owe us. Why would we don't owe you? And I think a lot of that is a sort of off-placed or misplaced frustration, because you all were told and cajoled and convinced into having children. They did it because they want more children to support the colonial project. The same way that we say that they want you to use your kids to support capitalism, to buy stuff, to support certain markets. And a lot of people genuinely don't want to have kids. Children are meant to be raised in a village. And in that village, not everybody has to have kids. They don't all have to have them at the same time for the village to have enough children for it to be a healthy intergenerational village. But under capitalism, we are told that everybody should have children. And a lot of people in the previous generations, I don't think you all had the language, to be honest, to learn and touch base with yourselves, to be willing to break away from social conditioning enough to not have children, because that meant being able to just accept shame. And for a lot of boomers and like Gen Z, like you were raised to avoid shame and not fitting in at all costs. And the cost of you accepting that agreement is very high. And we see that as millennials, as the generations that came after millennials, we see that. It's really obvious. For, again, those generations who, I don't know why my kids want to go no contact. A lot of you need therapy. A lot of you are not emotionally mature. A lot of you are really, really toxic, completely unhappy individuals trying to regulate with alcohol, with different drugs, with shopping. And again, to be graceful about it, I think that a lot of you didn't have the language, not because the language didn't exist, but because it was hidden from you. Because a lot of what we are learning as our generation, again, that is deconstructing things, right? And as we deconstruct, I think a prime target, for instance, was like the church and capitalism. And when you start to peel back those layers, you ask, how did these things get here? And then you find out about colonization. And then when you find out about that, you say, what was here before? Whether you are from somewhere in Europe, whether you're from somewhere in the global south, right? We all had cultures before this colonization. And pretty much all of those cultures saw children as their own spirits that parents are guardians of and do not own. But after colonization, which really essentially turned, if you live in the UK, if you live in America, Canada, it turned these places into factories. That your job is to go to a job and make money, have a 9-to-5, invest, support the banks, support the government, pay for all of this stuff. We still don't have health care. We still don't have dental care. We still don't have affordable child care. We don't have a good housing. There's plenty of places in the United States that don't even have clean water. What were you working for? And the reality is that you were owned. You were cajoled and convinced into being a cog in a machine. So like we said, the machine is colonization, and we're rolling back colonization, and the majority of pre-colonial indigenous lifeways see children as deserving of more respect and autonomy than colonial culture sees fit to give kids, which is why a lot of boomers and Gen Z parents are so put upon by the idea of a child having their own autonomy. And a lot of you were more steeped in this kind of personal numbing that allowed you to accept that. A lot of you were raised by people who had gone through extensive trauma, whether it was participating in colonial violence or being the victims of colonial violence, of wars, of famines, and of all kind of stuff, and that they never got therapy for any of it. And that gets passed down generationally. And the first few generations that pass it down are just like steeped in it. They don't really understand that it's happened to them, and they're fully reactionary. Eventually you get to a generation that has the ability to perceive it, and what we perceive is pain. It hurts a lot to be your kids. It hurts a lot to be your kids. It doesn't feel like love because you are not accepting people. You don't accept yourselves, and you don't accept your children because they won't fit the script that you decided to sell yourself to. A new child did not make that agreement. And as adults, it's your responsibility to figure out those agreements, and you can't put that off on your kids. So I don't know if that helps. If anybody really wants to work their way through it and undo it, I would say that you need to learn about what colonization did to you and your family, whether you participated and benefited from it or not. I can guarantee you that you're all heavily traumatized, and you're acting out of that trauma, and it makes you a dangerous and unpleasant person to be around. There's also a reason that they say that millennials are aging differently, aka more slowly, than other generations. It's because we said goodbye.
Southern trees bearing strange fruit, blood on the leaves, poplar trees. Pastoral scene from the gallant south. Them big bulging eyes and the twisted mouth. Scent of magnolia, clean and fresh. Then the sudden smell of burning flesh. Here is a fruit for the crows to pluck. For the rain to gather. For the wind to suck. For the sun to rock. For the leaves to drop. Here is a strange and bitter cry.
Nina Simone interprétait ici une des mélodies créées par Billie Holiday et qui demeure une des plus émouvantes, Strange Fruit.
Can we just stop? Have y'all noticed that the most popular social media accounts tied to black news or black engagement happen to be content farms for right-wing idiots? After the Shade Room situation, I wasn't as pessimistic as I am about it now, but I've started to notice it more and more to the point where it's like these accounts are just here to fucking lie while promoting right-wing talking points in order to get money off of the engagement. Rap is on my radar now. I unfollowed the fuck out of them. Do you know why? Mainly because every so often when Rap would post something having to do with political engagement, I'd always find myself being like, why the fuck is this on my feed? Mainly because it would just be some bullshit that has nothing to do with anything that we needed to know, but happens to be talking about Donald Trump or Putin in some sort of positive light. Like this shit right here. Why the fuck is this news? No one gives not a solitary fuck that people think that Trump looks like Elvis, except for motherfuckers who just want an excuse to talk about Trump as if he's some great guy and totally not a threat to democracy. But what really got me was this shit. Let me take you through the levels of sheer stupidity and lying that is this post. Lesson in media analysis once again. Maybe Trump is the right answer is the caption that is shown here, and you can see Trump and answer in orange, meaning that this specifically is what they wanted to highlight. Now, why is 50 Cent here? It's because known political activist and person who knows exactly what the fuck he's talking about when it comes to politics, 50 Cent posted a screenshot of a New York Post article. Pleased to know that that's the news outlet that 50 Cent chooses to get his news from. That article saying New York City launches $53 million program to hand out prepaid credit cards to migrant families. And 50 Cent in response saying, what the fuck, Mayor Adams, call my phone. I don't understand how this works. works. Somebody explain. I explain this. Maybe Trump is the answer. And that's what got posted to the rap account. Not telling us what the hell the program is. Not explaining and giving the help that 50 Cent so dearly requested. Not finding some other source to elucidate what exactly is going on. I don't think y'all hear me. The news story that these people posted boils down to famous rapper person who couldn't be bothered to look up what the fuck the program actually is, goes on social media and says he has no idea what the fuck he's talking about, and then Rap posted it as though this is a story that we needed to know. That popular rapper has no fucking clue what he's talking about. What makes it worse is when you realize this article and the caption on this post where it says, the migrants handing out $53 million in prepaid credit cards. It's a fucking lie. What's actually happening, since nobody involved in the production of that post bothered to look into it, is that New York City is launching a pilot program that will provide migrants with prepaid debit, not credit cards. The difference being that if it was a credit card, then they could just run up a tab and then they don't really got to pay it off because they migrants or whatever. It's a debit card that they can only use to buy food and baby supplies. They will be able to shop in bodegas, grocery stores, supermarkets, and convenience stores. This program is a replacement for the non-perishable food boxes that the city currently provides to migrants. The cards will contain an average of $12.52 per person per day for 28 days. I was just about to say, because I didn't even realize that this is in the article, SNAP and WIC federally funded health and nutrition programs already offer similar prepaid cards to dole out benefits, and officials say that this program will save $600,000 per month and $7.2 million annually, while helping to stimulate the local economy. So the New York mayor is giving migrants in New York City $12 fucking a day, and the news story that was reported is that 50 Cent has no fucking clue what's going on and just decided that Trump may be the answer to this, and then Rap decided, what do y'all think? Is Trump the answer? Without telling you what the fuck they're getting. They just gave fucking EBT cards to migrants for 28 days, and you guys are losing your shit. Mind you, even if Trump was president, this has no fucking bearing on what the New York City mayor is doing to the migrants in New York City. In summary, New York City decides to give migrants some fucking lunch money on a debit card that they can only use a certain amount of per day in order to help save money in the long run by giving them the ability to buy some food or whatever. And Rap decides, 50 Cent said something about this. He had no idea what he's talking about. That's gonna be the news story, and we're never gonna tell you what the fuck the actual program was. All as an excuse to put this picture as the first picture in the first slide in order to prop up a fucking fascist with multiple charges who's currently running somehow still as a reasonable option to Joe Biden, even though Joe Biden has nothing to do with this story, because a mayor somewhere who is a Democrat decided to give some people EBT. What the fuck is wrong with y'all? Don't act like these people are serious. Don't get any type of fucking news from there, because if they couldn't even pull from a different article in order to tell you something as simple as it's a debit card, not a credit card, what else are they keeping from you? And why the fuck else would they fuck up that badly unless they just don't give enough of a damn to tell you exactly what's going on? Good day.
So I have not so great news. Read this with me really quick. Kenya has discovered its first deposits of the valuable mineral coltan, the mining minister has said. The rare mineral is used to manufacture electric car batteries, mobile phones, and other electric devices. Now, this is not a good thing. This is not a good thing. And I'm saying that because this is exactly what we are trying to protect Congo from. This is what Congo is currently going through, that, we're trying to protect it from. And now another African country, Lord, I just don't know anymore, because the things that, they are doing to the people of Congo, the things that they're doing to the people of Palestine, the things that they're doing to the people of Tigray, we need to keep our eyes on Kenya. And if you're not following Hadija, reading Africana, I am going to tag her in this video. She speaks for Congo every day, all day. She's advocating for Congo. She is, at the forefront of this fight for Congo. And she just made a video saying that her own country has now discovered coltan, and it's not good news. And like she said in her video, if this was discovered somewhere in the West, it would have been a completely different story, because discovering resources like that in the West for locals, more often than not, if they're not people of color, if they're not, if they are not from regions where people of color are mostly located, it would be a good thing because then the locals would somewhat benefit from that, right? But in an African country, in a black nation, it's not something to be happy about. And we need to keep our eyes on Kenya. I can't believe that another country has just casually been added to the list. And it's like, it hasn't started yet, but just knowing that they've discovered this in Kenya, like there's already a deep-seated fear on like what is going to happen, because we're not stupid. We've seen this time and time again. We've seen this time and time again. So let's just go follow Hadija. Keep your eyes on Kenya. Pray for Kenya. Whatever higher power you believe in. I don't even know what to say because already I'm scared for the country. I'm sorry.
If you recognize this individual that's behind me, then you're 110% entitled to financial compensation. But don't you worry, I'm not going to beleaguer the point that's been all over Twitter and TikTok the past few weeks about how her shtick is weird and appropriative. I don't have time for that. I want to talk about something else. She's just the jumping off point. But just to get everybody up to speed, this lady behind me is named Miss Conebread, or at least that's what everybody's been calling her since she put out this video where she was trying soul food and butchering this black scent and said conebread instead of cornbread, because I guess in her mind black people don't pronounce the letter R. After our original video was made, a lot of black people rightfully pointed out that that clearly was not the way she talked because it didn't sound like the way anybody talked. And after she doubled down, we had a lot of people coming out to say why that was wrong, why it was very clear that she was faking. A lot of people from her own community, other Thai immigrants who grew up around black people saying, I don't talk like that, I don't know what your problem is. It really didn't take that long for people to get her out of here. I saw in the comments of the video that I was just talking about a clip of a video of her from a couple of years ago that easily proves that this is an accent that she just adopted recently for attention. So we're past that. And because of that, I didn't really think I was going to have anything to say on this topic until I saw this great video by this creator, I'm Israel, and remembered that, oh yeah, I literally have a linguistics degree. I have a lot to say on this topic. In the video, this creator is basically just making a list of all of the words that he loves in different dialects of AAVE that are not a part of his own regional slang. In the video, he acknowledges the fact that he has love and admiration for these words and the different types of slang that they come from, but he wouldn't say them himself simply because they're not part of where he's from, and if he said them, it'd probably sound a little awkward. This point is particularly interesting to me because I studied it a lot in school. At the intersection of language and African American studies, and also being somebody who's chronically on the internet, I was always wondering how this is going to affect the general speech patterns of society. And looking at the internet and seeing stan Twitter accounts pick and choose little bits of AAVE from all across the United States and mix them all together into horrifying Franken sentences, I was interested in how far this could go and if these people were ever going to learn the origins of these different words that they're appropriating. I don't know if you guys remember the situation with Tara's World where she said, I finna be in the pit, but usually when black people talk about the misuse of AAVE, they talk a lot about the mistakes in grammar, misunderstanding of the habitual be, misunderstanding of words like finna. Oftentimes these utterances come out sounding so bad because the people don't even understand what part of speech they're using, so they're not sure how to put it into the sentence in the correct way. But this is an entirely different linguistic situation because it's the disregard of the fact that we as black people don't even use all different types of AAV. It lends itself to the misconception that all black people are the same or are a monolith, and therefore our slang is interchangeable regardless of where it comes from. In the comments of this video, everybody was agreeing with him and listing terms that they themselves liked but wouldn't use, and I noticed that a lot of people were listing the words John and Jit, and I just wanted to read you guys something from a paper I actually wrote in school. The title of the paper was The Importance of the Study of Internet Speak, and I actually wrote it in 2022, which is crazy because I still think it's very relevant. I basically just discuss here in the paper how I feel like the fact that the LGBT community and the black community especially are the main contributors to the online lexicon, and as a result of that, we have all of this deeply cultured language that's being taken and divorced from its original context by new users. But this is the part that I actually wanted to highlight. I say there is a widespread assumption among non-black AAVE users that all black people use all AAVE phrases and that they are to some degree interchangeable. However, this is not the case. Phrases like John and Jit, which are both used to describe people, would not typically be found in the vocabularies of the same black person, as one comes from Philadelphia and the other from Florida. Still, we see non-black speakers of AAVE combine such phrases all the time, creating a hodgepodge of language that is foreign to either user. Thus, the mixture of these regional slang terms in this new context seems to create its own language divorced from the context of the original words. First, I wanted to bring that up because I think it's hilarious that Black people are all jealous of the same words. But the second reason I wanted to bring that up is because I think that there is a way to apply this bastardization that often happens when people take these different slang terms and put them together to accents as well. A big part of the study of linguistics is focusing on the way that words are formed by making different sounds within your mouth based on where you position your tongue, and that's what these charts are all about. They're telling you how the different tongue positionings translate to different sounds that we make. I think that the reason that it was so easy for Black people to identify this phony-ass accent is because the way that this girl mimics it doesn't even seem like it belongs to one particular group of Black people or one particular dialect. It's as if she's mixing together little bits and bobs from every Black person she's ever heard, which is why the words sit so oddly in her mouth. And that's how we end up with cone bread instead of cornbread. There are definitely dialects of AAVE and Black accents where the R is less vocalized and less pronounced, but she was pronouncing the R's in all the other words she said. And just like every other aspect of grammar and language, voicing and pronunciation of letters have rules. So if you're pronouncing something one way in one word, but another way in another when they would typically be pronounced the same by a native, people are easily going to catch you out. And what makes the situation even funnier is that in this video that this creator made correcting her, you can actually hear that even though it's not super exaggerated or put upon, this creator has his own little accent that probably came from growing up around Black people. But because he's not overdoing it, you can tell that that's just how his mouth knows to form the words. And I think this is a problem that we tended to see a lot when we were looking at a lot of our Catch Me Outside girls and our Woah Vickies. These people who put on these fake accents and this appropriation of Black culture, every part of it is a misunderstanding and a misinterpretation. The looks, the way that they interpret the music, the way that they use the terms, and even the way that they form the literal words. Like, bro, your body is rejecting it. So I guess this one goes out to all my appropriators out there. If you are going to try to pull off some sort of grand clout scheme and pretend to be from a culture that you're not from, then at the very least, try to do a little bit of accent work and research so that you don't end up sounding like you're from Houston, Atlanta, Vegas, because trust me, we can tell.
It's official. The Israeli forces are now attacking people in Rafah, the place where they told everyone to evacuate to, right? Remember, the beginning of this whole genocide, they started from the north, then the middle, then the south, and they pushed everyone to the Rafah crossing, and now they're actually at the Rafah crossing, unaliving people. And lately, at least 24 people have been unalived. And yeah, this is the reality of the people of Gaza. And every time Israel says, go here, go there, they always come and unalive people at that place, bomb those buildings and hospitals. This is how they work. And mind you, more than 1 million hungry, cold, and sick displaced Palestinians await Israel's planned attack on Rafah city, with children roaming the streets looking for scraps for food. This is the reality of people in Rafah, because everybody went over there and they have nothing. Let me show you a picture. It's 120 days of genocide, and this is Bisan's video, literally showing you Rafah and next to the border, and look at all these tents that are set up. Millions of people. This is their condition. This is how they're living. And the Israeli forces are coming to basically attack these people and everywhere else of Rafah city. This is what they're dealing with. This is the conditions of children, men, women. And Israel is lying to our faces, saying that, oh, they're fighting Hamas and the resistance group in this area, this displaced people, more than 1 million people. The excuses are endless in the books. And this is right after the ICJ hearing. Isn't this outrageous? This is just insanity to me.
Flo Milli is pretty as fuck, but she would never be on the same level as Ice Spice because she's not as light as...
Flo Milli has very publicly asked to be left out of this colorism conversation, specifically that you stop using her as an example of colorism in the industry. And the subtext of that request is that I think it's very painful for her. It also doesn't make sense, especially when you compare her to someone like Ice Spice, because Ice Spice is a rarity, and while colorism certainly plays into that, the idea that an artist could get this famous just from one song is very, very rare. She's more comparable to someone like Lil Nas X, because in reality, what most people think of as this artist just popped up out of nowhere, or this is the artist's big break, is just an artist who's been grinding it out for years and years through a series of small commercial and or critical successes that finally culminate in a big moment. But typically, whenever artists have #1 songs on the billboards, they had even a small fan base behind them. And while Ice Spice certainly had that, she was making music before the Munch song, you just can't compare what she's been able to do in her career to most people. Something very weird about continuing to use a woman who has publicly asked for you to stop using her as the poster child of colorism and superseding her wishes. You could say all of these things without mentioning her by name or by bringing her up at all. It also downplays what Flo has been able to do in her career, because she's doing pretty well. As a longtime Flo Milli fan, she's gotten sponsorships, her albums are well received by critics, she has a solid fan base. She's not a household name, but she's continuing to grow. She's hungry. I wholeheartedly believe that Flo Milli is going to be someone we're talking about 5, 6, 7 years from now, which longevity may be more important than anything. Initial success is not the greatest predictor of long-term fame or contributions to music, and that's in no way to downplay Ice Spice. More so to say that, like, it's coming for Flo Milli, and I think she said this herself whenever she, again, requested to not be part of this conversation, that good things are coming to her, and that she's done a lot already. The last thing I'll say is whenever she requested this, people made think pieces and YouTube videos, and even publicly admonished her for not wanting to talk about colorism, as if a dark-skinned black woman from the South needed a lecture on how colorism is impacting her life. I'm sure she's aware. In reality, I think people treat her as some sort of, like, virtue thing, because I just can't imagine how someone who's actually a fan of her is participating in this conversation or is in the comments when, like, she said this, like, almost a year ago.
Okay, is Gen Z really aging faster than millennials? Is Justin Bieber actually still in love with Selena Gomez, and is that why her and Hailey Bieber are constantly feuding? Who is the baddest in the rap game? Nicki Minaj or someone 5, 10, 15 years her junior? And if a woman doesn't pay at least half on the first date, what does she actually bring to the table besides punani? Those are the talks we should be tired of. But y'all don't get to be tired of talking about or hearing about genocide. And every single time I see one of those little tweets or one of those little comments, I'm muting Palestine, I'm muting Gaza, I don't want to talk about it anymore, I'm over it, I'm baffled, I'm flabbergasted, because in my head there's no way that you positioned yourself in such a privileged place to feel like you could just be tired of the erasure of a population of people. There's no way. Because for every, I just don't want to hear about it anymore, y'all are quick to update us on the latest Taylor Swift discourse. Meanwhile, I'm sure that Bisan is tired of waking up every single morning displaced from her home, having to record the dehumanization of herself and her people. I'm sure that Plestia and Mutaz and all of the Palestinians who have been evacuated are tired of being away from their land and would like to go home now. And I'm sure that the Palestinians around the world are tired of waiting by the phone with bated breath, hoping that they hear news that their loved ones and relatives have survived the night. The same way that I'm sure that that young girl who got her leg amputated on her father's dining room table without anesthesia, and the other 10 Palestinian children a day that lose a limb, are tired of looking at their body parts, wondering where the rest of it is and hoping they could get it back. I'm sure they're tired too. So every time I hear someone go, I have boycott fatigue, you know, like I'm just so over it. I just want my Starbies. I scratch my head. I clean out my ears, because there's no way that you've privileged yourself and your comforts in a situation this dire. Because you don't get to be tired enough to quit. Not when you are sitting in the comfort of your home that is likely heated in the middle of winter, making commentary on your phone that has both internet and electricity. You don't get to turn your back on people who need us. And if we're going to dead a conversation, let it be, is Ariana Grande a homewrecker or a victim? Or are men too masculine to drink cocktails? Let it be one of those stupid ancient conversations. It doesn't get to be this. We don't get to be tired. We're better than that.
So, the elephant in the room. COVID. Don't dissociate. Don't scroll away. I know you're about to, but you need to listen to this. I know it's difficult to listen to things about COVID right now. I know that it's hard. There's a lot of things happening, but this is pressing. I know it's difficult to continue to listen about COVID if you have not been taking precautions. If you've not been wearing a mask, it's hard to hear about the ways in which you may have put yourself in danger, but we are in one of the biggest COVID surges of all time, and you need to be taking precautions. There's this little thing called wastewater data. Now, what is that? The wastewater that comes from us, from washing hands, from going to the bathroom, we shed COVID into it. We shed COVID into the water system. And based on the concentration of COVID in wastewater, we can get really, really, really good estimates about how many people are infected at one time. And the estimates are not looking good, babes. They're looking very bad. 2 million COVID infections per day at peak surge, estimated to be January 10th. 105 million infections, 5 million resulting long COVID cases. That is 5 million people disabled for the rest of their lives, mind you. And I know you guys know, because I know everybody's seeing tweets like this. Everybody's seeing posts like this. What's up with everybody getting sick? Everybody's getting sick. Oh my God, everybody's sick. It's COVID. Little known fact about COVID is that it functions very, very similarly to HIV in the same way that it destroys your immune system. Whether that destruction is permanent or only lasts a couple months, a couple years, we don't necessarily know that yet. But based on the predictions, that is permanent. It is permanent. If you've gotten COVID a ton of times and you find yourself getting sick all the time now, that very well may be happening for the rest of your life. Because you have long COVID. I'm sorry. I'm really, 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 really sorry if you are hearing this for the first time through a TikTok. That is the government failing you. That is the public health system failing you. They are failing us. They're failing us. They're letting us believe that COVID does not exist anymore. For reasons I can only allege. For reasons I don't really know. For reasons that having us be aware of COVID means giving us paid time off. Having us be aware of COVID means giving us free PCR testing and free masks. Having us be aware of COVID means the government spending a little bit more money on some stuff when that money could go to the military. But this means that they are allowing a deadly airborne vascular disease to infect us over and over and over and over again. What are they protecting? Maybe it's the human capital that comes from all of us having to go to work. Maybe it's the human capital that comes from all of us spending all of our money and still participating in the economy like nothing is wrong. Is that counterintuitive? Yes, because we will all be disabled in about 5 or 10 years and half the workforce will have to work from home. I'm like, it's not going to work out for them forever, but as long as they can get a little bit of money. Now, this is getting very radical, but stay with me. Rich people and politicians don't even gather without all testing beforehand and without improving the ventilation in the buildings that they go to, without having an air purifier in every single room, without opening the windows. They all know how dangerous COVID is, but they're letting us believe that it's not that bad. Now, I don't know about you. I don't really trust the government. So if the government is saying that it's fine, it's definitely not fine. Now, you can make your own conclusions about that. You can believe whatever you want to. What is true, however, is that COVID will disable you. Multiple COVID infections will disable you. They'll cause heart, brain, lung, liver damage, neurological system damage, nervous system damage. They will do a lot of things to you. They will literally have your immune system functioning like you have HIV. What can you do about this? Wear a mask. Wear a mask. Take tests. Quarantine if you're sick. I know a lot of people don't necessarily have that option because PTO literally doesn't fucking exist, which sucks. So what do? You wear a mask. If you're sick and you have to leave the house, you wear a mask. You try not to let yourself get infected. You try not to infect other people. It's community care. It's taking care of each other. And we have to do that because nobody else will. Nobody else will save you. Nobody is coming to save you. You have to do it. I'm really, really sorry if you didn't know this already, that you had to hear it through a TikTok. But the government won't tell you, so I will.
Please stop scrolling. I don't normally ask people to stop scrolling, but I really want y'all to listen to this. If you have not seen this image yet, what you are looking at behind me is the complete paycheck of an inmate at a California state prison. This inmate donated the entirety of his paycheck to a Palestinian relief fund, and someone at the fund made this picture public. Look at how much this paycheck is. It says $17.74. Now, take a guess how long this man worked. You're literally wrong. It's 136 hours. This man worked for a little under 1 month's time. If we're working 40 hours a week, a little under 1 month's time, and made $17. That is 13 cents an hour, you guys. That's a dime and 3 pennies. I want to highlight to you guys that working for 10 cents, a little over 10 cents an hour, that is slavery. That's called slave labor. And the reason why they're getting paid 13 cents an hour is because the 13th and the 14th Amendment that y'all love to quote that says slavery is now illegal actually made that part legal. And a lot of the luxuries that we have today, like our nice cheapy clothes and some of your favorite fruits in the middle of the winter. Yeah, it's more than license plates and hangers. That is used with slave labor. That is used with prison labor. That is used with convict leasing. This is all history. This is your moment to get educated. Read this book, Unusually Cruel. Even flip the camera so y'all can screenshot it. Bam. And I want you to learn about this prison industrial complex and why we even got here in the first place. My kudos to this man who donated a month of his labor to a relief effort, because everyone has a place in this revolution. But I want you guys to understand the reason why we're even here in the first place. Once again, get up, get out, and get active. Thank you.
I hate that we just want to brush over the fact that our entire country, like the ruling class of our country, almost got completely overthrown at a random event that was literally planned publicly online by a group of people who probably have a collective IQ of a single digit. A single digit were allowed to get as far as to walking all the way up inside that government building. Making our government officials hide in bunkers? How did they even make it past the front door? And then you have to sit here and look at how white fragility stops black people, not just black people, let me say everybody who's not socially acceptable or at least adhering to white comfort. You stop their ability from existing or self-actualizing because you, as this person's ability to self-actualize, needs to be prioritized because you are somehow some chosen one of some chosen God who doesn't respect any of the rest of us. So we have to be collateral damage for you to be able to self-actualize yourself and continue to indoctrinate yourself with a bunch of lies that promote your superiority or dehumanize the rest of us so you can feel good about yourself. But we are also not allowed to self-actualize because we have not been allowed the opportunity to be deemed human by somebody who dehumanizes everybody except the self. And to that extent is probably so sociopathic that they probably even dehumanize themselves. And instead of taking accountability by recognizing they do it through themselves to other people, they just keep doing it to other people until there's nobody else to abuse.
I hear you, Melanie, but people are not putting their morals first when it comes to the genocide of Palestinians. People are putting their desire and their attempt to cope and find a way to absolve themselves of the guilt that they have based on the horrors that they've seen of the genocide, knowing that their tax dollars are being used to fund the genocide of innocent people across the world. Because the reality is, nobody's going to stop paying their taxes. The taxes are what's being used to fund it, and yet nobody's going to stop paying their taxes. Nobody's going to stop going to work. So the only thing that people think that they can have control over is voting. People say that their morals prevent them from wanting to vote for Joe Biden because of the genocide. I have to ask, why do people's morals not kick in when it comes to the impact that a Republican presidency would have on the people of this country? I said in another video, do you not remember the videos in schools of children being subjected to other children yelling, "Build that wall, build that wall"? Because those children have racist parents who support Trump, and now those children that are in America have to deal with that. Why are people's morals kicking in? They're saying it kicks in for the genocide of the Palestinians, but it's not kicking in for the impact that a Republican presidency would have. So not just Americans, I keep saying it's Americans, but there's undocumented people here as well who will be impacted by a Republican presidency. And I know one of your comments, you said I should meet people where they're at, and I should also educate people on like local elections. I'm not doing that. That's beyond extensive analysis and having to bring all that together. What I am good at is putting things into context. putting into context about the misinformation that people have. People are unorganized. People are disillusioned. People don't know what to do because they've been misinformed. The amount of people who did not know that Congress controls the funding, has to approve funding. The amount of people who still don't know, have not seen a video yet, and haven't looked it up themselves about how saying Joe Biden bypassed Congress. Joe Biden did not bypass Congress. Joe Biden did not even speak to Congress. The Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, bypassed Congress. And bypassing Congress does not mean that Congress said no to the funding. Bypass does not mean that Congress denied the funding and that Biden administration said we're going to do it anyway. Bypass simply means that because the benefits, because of fossil fuels, I tagged a video in my caption that you can watch where it explains this, the billions of dollars that are in fossil fuels in Gaza. That's why America is supporting the state of Israel, because they want the fossil fuels that are there. My train of thought. Because the benefits of supporting the state of Israel and taking control of the area that has fossil fuels, this was dubbed as a national emergency. It was for the national emergency, the benefit of the United States. This was in the nation's best interest. That's why they were able to bypass it and get the funding approved without having to have Congress deliberate and vote on it and agree. The Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, has the power, and that is not abnormal. That's perfectly legal. It's perfectly in line with the system. This should not have shocked people, but because people are so misinformed, they're becoming more hopeless because they're thinking, oh my gosh, Joe Biden, Congress said no, but Joe Biden said yes. And now people are even more hopeless. It's like, no, you're hopeless because you're so misinformed. You don't know how things work. These people are so hopeless because they're so misinformed. There's nothing that can be done to save the Palestinian people. There's nothing. If it was, we would have been discussing it already. Again, we did boycotts. We had asked for the ceasefire. The genocide is still happening. So people's only way that they feel like they can do something is this idea of not voting or voting third party. And our elders have never done something like that. The idea of not voting or the idea of putting votes into a third party. They made sure to vote Democrat. I made it in another video. Our black elders, our ancestors, voted for these white male presidents, knowing that these white male presidents did not support reparations, did not support abolishing police, and making sure that anti-blackness was addressed. They did not do that. They still voted for them because they knew that they needed to progress, society to progress, so that us, their descendants, would have a better chance and that we can progress it further. Same with women. There's feminists. Feminists have voted for these male presidents, that these feminists knew that these male presidents are very sexist and that they do not prioritize making sure that misogyny and anti-misogyny and feminist theory is making sure that it's taught nationally so that women, the harm and the unaliving of women is reduced. Feminists still voted. Gay people still voted for presidents that they knew did not support gay marriage until Obama. Voting is not based on our morals. Voting is based on us organizing and being realistic and looking at the reality of who is the best candidate based on the system that we have so that they can progress and that we can get more people who represent us in office and eventually people who are younger than us, who will be, if we decide to have grandkids, or even not if we have grandkids, just people who would be our grandkids' age, who are yet to exist, will have a better chance. I'm not about to change my words with people who have gladly said, they're gladly saying that they would gladly contribute to us losing more rights and risking a Republican presidency. They would rather the house burn down with us, basing this on their guilt for what is happening to Palestinians. Not their morals, it's their guilt. I'm realizing this generation wants a quick fix. This is a long game. This is a long-term issue. There is no quick fix to any of this. Our elders, our grandparents, could only have imagined that we, the younger generation, would be able to do what we're doing our grandparents couldn't imagine doing and having the opportunities that we have. And yet here people are saying they're gladly to make a point, to stick it to the Democrats, who are going to be rich even if they don't get elected. They're still going to have their houses. They're still going to have their food security. They're still going to have money. There's no sticking it to them by not voting for them. The goal of my videos and other people who would say that they agree with me and have my stance, we're not here to coddle people. We're also not here to give people hope. We're here to give people accurate information. I would be surprised if this accurate information about how messed up the system would make anybody feel hopeful or happy. It just puts you, however people are processing this information, it's most likely going to be negative. You're going to be like, damn, this is really messed up. Yes, it is. But now that you understand accurately what is happening, you got to process this and you got to figure it out and then make a decision. Because people are deciding not to vote or vote their party based on misinformation. Thinking that, oh my gosh, the system is so, there's no checks and balances. No, the things that have been happening are exactly within the system because it's been set up that way. And there's an explanation for all of this that is logical and it makes sense. And that it could change if we just voted. Because over and over again, when you listen to politicians, people who will speak and be on podcasts that I've listened to, the theme that they all keep saying is that the voter turnout is so low. That's why we're experiencing all these policies from conservative, Republican, racist people, discriminatory people. Because not enough people who are on our side who say they want liberation went out to vote. It's not rigged. People aren't participating. What's happening is people are being performative. They want to be seen as morally good when it comes to saying they're not going to vote, as if that's going to do anything to help Palestinian people. Help anybody, really. And what proves that this is all performative from people, saying they're not going to vote or they're going to vote their party, is that nobody who's not voting or who's going to vote their party, nobody can explain the long-term goal, the long-term plan, the long-term impact. Nobody. Because this is haphazardly done. It's not logical. People are reacting this way to appease their guilt. Because they are so disarrayed and in disbelief, and they're shocked. Because they weren't paying attention, because they didn't fully understand what it truly meant to be an American and what being an American contributes to. What are we going to say to the American children who will be impacted in ways that you can't even imagine due to a Republican presidency?
We're not African Americans. We're Sudanese Americans.
Yes,
we are African Americans because Sudan is in Africa, so we're African Americans.
I know that.
That's a whole separate question. Because Dr. Umar actually,
we are African,
created his own
by
definition.
the term, and that's why some Black Americans say they don't want to be called African Americans because they don't feel like they have any ties to Africa.
I think reparations should be different for African Americans compared to us because we just got here.
No, we don't.
They
need
deserve most of the reparations. I'm gonna tell you this right now.
We shouldn't even be in the conversation of reparations. Because we're not descendants of slavery. Reparations from the how we were colonized in Africa. Yeah, we can get reparations from France and Britain and them, but we don't need to get reparations here at all.
Yeah, we'll never get it.
Can I ask this question? What are the nuances or parallels to the South Sudanese or African with the Black American experience?
When I was growing up, most of my friends were African, and when I would say like stuff about Black people, they're like, oh no, I'm not Black, I'm African. And our parents would say that too. I would hear their parents say the word akata like towards Black people. So I just don't think that our generation feels like that. I think it's the older generation that really feels like the separation more, just because they were immigrants.
Honestly, I felt more othered and more like pushed aside by Black American women than anyone else. Not saying, not to perpetuate that trope of angry Black woman or mean Black woman, but when I met Sarah in high school, she was my first best friend. All the way up until high school, I had never had a close friend that was Black. Sarah was the first one, and she's African, so I've never had the experience where I was bullied by African people or felt other. Like, this is my first time ever hearing that term that's derogatory towards Black people.
Oh, the Yakata term?
Yeah, this is my first time ever hearing
I've
that.
never heard that either.
Yeah, I've never used
So let's be honest, that's a West African term, and it's not to separate East Africans versus West Africans, but more tension when it comes to these specific issues when it comes to West Africans and African Americans, because there is historical context.
Yeah, they're in closer proximity.
Exactly.
Yeah,
for sure. Especially when you talk about slavery.
I think Claudine Gay's main mistake is that she might have forgotten that she was a black woman in a den of vipers known as academia. Because the answers during that congressional hearing didn't give media trained. And I don't know if like the expectation was that this was a truth-seeking mission and that she'd be given nuance and grace. Ma'am, girl, Mrs. Ma'am, girl. Let's be real. Let's be fucking for real, okay? But these most recent accusations of her being a plagiarist is just textbook misogynoir to me, and y'all really gonna have to come harder with some good concrete evidence for me to be like, and I for real, we'll take it back if y'all can prove it. It's textbook misogynoir because you mean to tell me somebody who was able to traverse the different levels of the academic ivory tower and do so successfully that she was able to now lead the ivory tower was a plagiarist, but she did so without the cover of maleness or whiteness? Impossible. These institutions are so well set up to make sure black people do not survive or thrive in them. So the one who was able to make it did so on some Catch Me If You Can, Frank Abagnale Jr. type. Impossible. No. A thesis defense alone is one of the most rigorous. Writing a thesis alone is one of the most rigorous. Like, there's a different citation system that you have to follow. If you cite somebody, that person might look it up just to make sure you're citing them correctly, and might throw a flag on the play if you didn't use it in the way that they intended it. What do you mean? No, y'all gonna have to come harder with that one. But she forgot, and I hope nobody else forgets that there are black women in the world. I really think she forgot that she was one, and she really thought it was like, oh, they're asking me questions in good faith. We don't get that liberty. We don't get that space. We don't get to do that. And it's sad. And it also happens too where black women are typically promoted. If you notice, like, especially with black women CEOs or like C-suite, always promoted and put in places when there's trouble. There's trouble afoot. Because they expect you to fail. They use it as like a signal, like, oh yeah, we did something. We did something good, right? We did something really good. Look, we have one of them in place. And then they'll make sure that there's no institutional buy-in, there's no institutional support, so that when you fail, it's like, well, you know, that's why we don't hire them, because they suck. So if anybody was coming under the false assumption that HR is your friend, please let me use this moment to completely disabuse you of that notion. It's not safe. Stay very awake. Goodbye.
I'm not like no Dougie Fresh or nothing. None of us would be here without this beat.
A basic New York drum pattern.
So my uncle, he made the chicken noodle soup beat. Hey, that's so cute. He told me that he gave the beat to somebody else. Like, this is somebody else's beat. You can't rap on it, or whatever the case may be. So I stole the beat. And then I created the lyrics while I was in school, in the detention room. Every time I would be in class in high school, I would get put in the detention room because I was always doing music. All my friends would get kicked out of class just to come to this session of freestyling and making music and making beats. I wanted to incorporate the dance that I got from that party. Hence the reason we have a song about soup and soda. And when I got out of school, I took it to DJ Webster, who at that time was one of the biggest DJs in New York City. And I said, this song is fire. Like, this is gonna be it. And when Webster heard it, he was like, let's start working. One day it's a Rucker basketball game, and this is a big deal in New York City. People come from all around the world to watch these ball players. And then you have the music incorporated. DJ Enough came. He is one of the biggest DJs, and he actually broke the chicken noodle soup record. He's playing the record, and it starts pouring down raining because it's one of them summertime thunderstorms. Pouring, like, where you running like, it's raining. And nobody stopped dancing. And when I'm telling you the song is playing and all the kids are dancing in the rain, nobody's leaving the court, nobody's running. And once they saw that, they was like, what is this? DJ Enough took the record to Hot 97. So it's playing over and over and over.
I don't feel safe as a Palestinian. Would you? Now that you've seen all the terror, all the trauma that we're put through, you've seen all the dead babies, the families under rubble, even in the comfort of our home and in the safety of our bubbles, I don't feel safe as a Palestinian. I never have. Ever since I was a kid, I felt a target on my back. All my classmates got to celebrate the land of their ancestors. But I saw the way the hatred and the racism would fester anytime I had the nerve to get excited or express how I was blessed to be Palestinian, so I learned to repress. I don't feel safe as a Palestinian. I wish I did. I wish I wasn't so concerned that one day I'll have a kid, and that kid won't understand why we can't visit the land where Siti lived, why there's no birthright for the indigenous. I don't feel safe as a Palestinian. Not even here. In America, where I'm supposed to live without a fear, but a 6-year-old Palestinian was stabbed to death. 3 college students were shot for this scarf around my neck. How dare we dare to exist? If our existence is a threat, then I don't feel safe as a Palestinian. Why should I? I've been watching genocide for months documented live. These people look like you and I. We've heard every scream and cry, but our president sends them billions so millions more can die. I don't feel safe as a Palestinian. But that will change. I know one day our homeland will live a life without this pain. I know their screams will be of joy. I know their tears will be of laughter, and Palestine will finally be happily ever after. We will be safe as Palestinians. One day soon, they can't break us, they can't shake us, no matter what evil they use, no matter how many they kill, no matter what bullets they shoot. You can't murder the soul of a native people who refuse to accept their occupation. So no matter what they do, we will be safe as Palestinians. It's just a matter of time. From out of the hell of darkness, the light of freedom will shine. From under the city's rubble, the people of Gaza will rise and dismantle this occupation, because within our lifetime, we will finally be safe as Palestinians. Free Palestine.
We get asked this question a lot because we go to countries where it's frowned upon to be gay or homosexual by law, but also in culture. We just came back from Ghana recently. We went for Dead in December. To set context, we're based in the UK. We're a married couple. And yeah, so we want to share experience of what it was like being a tourist in Ghana. Also understand what the laws are over there.
Yeah, so I think in our experience it was safe, but like certain rules had to be obeyed and followed for us to like have a safe experience out in Ghana. So for instance, we went to this queer friendly club, or club that we were told was queer friendly, last Saturday. We got into the club, one of our friends put us on the guest list, like the queue was crazy, but we were able to get in, thankfully. And we head to this one room, which feels more of a safe space than the rest of the club. Like, I feel like the rest of the club was quite traditional in like Dirty December. It felt very hetero, felt very like Dirty December vibes. But we're in this one room, which felt like a safe space. We can see there are other queer people in the space, like dancing with each other. T and I were very expressive, so we were dancing with each other as well. But then at one point, T leans over and gives me a peck on the lips. And at that point, we just feel like the energy shift a bit, and it felt like folks dispersed around us. And I didn't actually notice it until T called it out. And I was just like, okay, cool, just like continue dancing. And then the next day we went for breakfast with one of our friends who wasn't at the club at the time. And then we're telling him, hey, we're at this club. And he was like, oh, I already know. And we're like, oh, how do you know? And he said, like, people at the club essentially told him that the TikTok couple were in the club lip-syncing each other. And we were just like, wow. So this is like a space that's, a space that is a queer-friendly space. And the fact that that news got out in that way means that there's certain like rules that we have to obey, and that I think gave us more of an understanding around how LGBTQ plus people in Ghana navigate their sexualities in public, and there's certain rules and boundaries that you don't cross, which makes sense. And I think from then on we navigated it a bit differently. So yeah, I think to answer the question, like as tourists, our experience, it was safe for us in Ghana in terms of we did not experience overt homophobia or anything like that. And I think that there, like Andrew said, there are rules that you follow. Like public display of affection is not necessarily something you should be comfortable doing there, or you are comfortable with doing there. And I think for us, something I just remembered is like when we go to countries like Paris or Barcelona, two black gay men holding hands, it's also, we get looks, we get stares. A lot, yeah. So I would say that in Ghana, definitely was safe for us. As tourists, this is not from a local experience at all. We just want to put that disclaimer out there. But yeah, I think public display of affection is something you keep to queer-friendly spaces, but not even then. Yeah, but even there, respect the boundaries. But yeah, cool.
Elsa Majimbo is currently being stalked. She is the internet's African fashionista, champion chess whiz, and just a biting, hilarious content creator. She's also a beautiful black woman who was asked out by a guy she wasn't interested in. She told him this, and he has proceeded to stalk, harass, and follow her for the last 8 months. She posted about it on her Instagram because she's tired. I got tired for her just reading about it, but then I kept reading and I stayed on the internet, and then I got furious. I happened to see that post before I saw another post about billionaire and all the social capital in the world, Miss Taylor Swift, and the fact that her stalker has also taken advantage of our very weak stalker laws in the US. And to my dismay, I read that a lot of Taylor Swift fans spent the weekend trying to take down explicit AI images of Taylor Swift being assaulted at a football game. Of course, those images went viral, and it took forever to get them down. If it wasn't for this fan-sponsored campaign, they would still be running around. You might think, okay, I'm not a famous chess player, I'm not dating Travis Kelce, I can mark myself safe from this madness, and if I play by the rules, I will be untouched. Equality feminism has worked so hard, so if I just play by the rules, work really hard, I will rise and I will be respected. Now, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, so let's frame this as a warning and a reframing for your everyday life. First, yes, I did see the collective outrage online from women who are starting to clock how this AI situation is going to have a particular kind of blowback for them. And we're not stupid. Like, obviously, we all know that these are issues that stalking affects all sorts of women, internet abuse affects all sorts of women. And if you grew up like me in like the largest one of the largest demographics and most powerful political voting box, which is the conservative evangelical world, you understand that a good chunk of this country is depending on patriarchal values to save the country and uphold it. Quote Tay, we are not out of the woods yet, folks. Of course, what these women posted about was upsetting, but it was not half as upsetting as the responses. The responses to these fears and concerns were beyond lacking. And I would say what's endangering us is this idea of equality feminism, which essentially just means that once we have legal parity with men, that's all we need to be safe. That's all we need in society. I'd see in these comments this idea that like the American legal system is just going to pull through for us and we're all going to get through these tough times. We just need to report these things to the police and rely on the laws. It's made me really angry, but if I've learned anything, it's that anger is a sign that a boundary has been crossed, and boy, have boundaries been crossed. As the controversial radical feminist theorist Catherine McKinnon said, if you can articulate something, You can challenge it, you can critique it, and then you can change it. On this day, 20 years after the Super Bowl reveal incident with Janet Jackson and Justin Timberlake derailed her careers and left his untouched, we are going to articulate this. Backlash surrounding these two particularly successful women and the women who comment about their experiences similarly to what they're going through, that's what we're going to be breaking down. I don't know how many of you have personally been stalked or had to turn a man down, but it's probably more than I'd like to admit here. I'm going to assume that most of you don't wake up and go, oh, I don't want to succeed, I don't want happiness, I don't want liberty, I don't want any freedom in my life. You don't. We all want different things, and that's the point of feminism, that everybody gets a choice to decide how they want to live their life and how they want to pursue the liberty that is granted to them, theoretically. Because what a number of us see when we're just outside trying to live normal lives, or we turn down men we're not very interested in, or we become the first Black presidents at colleges, or we date people on football teams and bring over $500 million of an economic boost to that team, we find men who want to control us and make us small. Because of this over-reliance on equality feminism, they don't face laws specifically designed and equipped to protect us. To shame us and scare us hasn't changed. Now, some of this is to be expected because it always gets worse before it gets better. The reason there is such a backlash to female agency is because female agency is not the cultural norm. Catherine McKinnon pointed this out decades ago in her work Towards a Feminist Theory of the State. Toward, not towards. She points out our history that the state and its laws were for men, specifically the supremacy of men, and the state and its laws were from a male point of view. So the law itself views women the way men used to view women. How you treat them, how you see them, it's all from that male perspective. Entire legal reality was designed from this point of view. What was normal in this country for centuries, men to control and look over women and what they did. Couldn't technically be assaulted because we weren't even legally our own entity. Couldn't really own anything, and if we were to have any political, economic, or social relevance in society, it was only through our relationship to men. White women could marry legally the most powerful entity in American society, which was other white men. Black women, historically, unfortunately, would find themselves forming these relationships that went against their own moral code in order to get some measure of safety for themselves and their offspring. Across colors and across the class lines, everything economically, politically, socially was meted out through relationships with men. Recently, as in the 1970s, have we started to live in a world that is less and less that case. Elsa makes her own money. She has her own platform. She can afford politically and socially to reject anyone she wants and to have whoever she fancies. Taylor holds an economic and cultural power we gave her by buying all her songs and stuff about our girly feelings. You and I have the ability to have children, start a line of credit, own a house, start a business, all without needing the legal sign-off of a man. It's a relatively new social reality where women don't have to stay with abusive partners or stay with whatever man will take them to just have a life. It's new. Who else it's new for? The men who just realized we can turn them down. The ones who think that 5 seconds of Taylor Swift on their screen ruins their man time. And the ones who now realize if they don't treat us properly, we have the social power to just walk away. Alas, that anger is made invisible by liberal feminism. Before you get all upset and come for me, let's repeat what liberal feminism is about. It's reductionist, so you can actually argue with me in the comments on this, but I would define it as this idea that if we just make everything equal, things will shake out in the end. Now, because Taylor Swift is a nice, rich white woman, she is a great face for this issue with stalking and AI cyber attacks because there is a built-in empathy that society has for her that it doesn't have for other people who will similarly face the same issues she's facing. We also have the opportunity to clock this hatred for what it is or miss it entirely. If we clock this for what it is, which is this is a great example of men using fear and shame to intimidate us and make us small and drive them out of spaces that we have every right to be in, we can critique those actions and we can actually point them out across broader society. And also critique where the law fails to protect us specifically from those actions. They miss it and assume that equal access to football games and just walking out on the sidewalk is enough to protect us. We miss the opportunity to make and create laws that actually do something for our safety, and to make laws that take into account the fact that they are trying to subordinate us on the basis of our gender. Right now, if you look at stalking laws, if you look at laws for revenge porn and things like that, you don't have laws that take into account the story that a large demographic of men find politically useful to tell about our gender. One of the things I love best about Catherine McKinnon is she is not concerned with just sounding academic or everybody having academic language like that's going to save us. No. Our practical lives, our practical experiences, our personal lives have wisdom for us to use to protect ourselves. We're going to make her answer to what we're facing and how what's coming down the pike in terms of AI and the fact that men have new ways to stalk us, we're going to make that a bit more accessible by breaking down her philosophy of dominant feminism. Joke's on me for thinking like I could fit my entire thing on dominant feminism in this one video. So here's another Oscar de la Renta earring. I think they're, sea anemones? Sea urchins? I love them. If you've been stalked or harassed, what did you wish that the law would do differently, and how do you wish other people around you had responded differently? Because, oh my gosh, the comments are scary.
The University of Michigan just released a study. It shows that the rice the United States ships to Haiti contains unhealthy levels of arsenic and cadmium, which can increase the risk of cancer and heart disease. The research showed that the average arsenic and cadmium concentration in the U.S. rice were nearly twice as high as compared to Haitian-grown products, and in some cases, it exceeded international limits. Now, this is not new to the Haitian people. For decades, Haitians have been saying that American rice is getting us sick. Higher levels of diabetes, significantly more gastrointestinal illnesses. For decades, Haitians have been saying that America first destroyed Haiti's rice industry and now is poisoning the Haitian people with American rice. And now, this rigorous research from the University of Michigan supports these accusations. In fact, this study began because a researcher kept hearing stories of Haitians who were getting sick after eating American rice. This is especially dangerous for Haitians because in Haiti, rice is a staple food. In 2020, the average Haitian ate about 187 pounds of rice in a year, compared to the average of 26 pounds in the United States. Before the 1980s, Haiti was self-sufficient in food consumption. We didn't depend on imports from other nations in order to feed ourselves. 90% of the rice eaten in Haiti was locally grown in the Atibonite area. But then, in 1995, after being pressured, coerced by Bill Clinton and his administration and the IMF, Haiti decreased its tariff on rice from 50% to 3%, the lowest in the Caribbean. A surge of rice poured into Haiti, completely destroying our rice industry. And so now today, instead of producing 90% of our rice, we're importing 90% of our rice from the United States. Haiti is the 5th largest importer of American rice in the world, and this rice is poisoning our people.
Our mostly conservative Supreme Court is going to be deciding on whether or not it's unconstitutional to bar unhoused people from sleeping in public. And who's responsible for this? Democrats in California. So, read up there, the Supreme Court agreed to re-examine the case of Johnson v. City of Grants Pass, where the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit deemed it unconstitutional for cities to punish homeless residents for staying on public property if they lacked access to shelter alternatives. Grants Pass, an Oregon city of almost 40,000 residents, lacks a homeless shelter, and the housing programs they do have only serve a small fraction of the homeless population. In 2013, Grants Pass began aggressively enforcing a set of ordinances that make it unlawful to sleep anywhere on public property with so much as a blanket to survive cold nights. Read up here to find that the Ninth Circuit ruled 2-1 that the Grants Pass measure was unconstitutional and it violated the 8th Amendment, which prohibits cruel and unusual punishments. Gavin Newsom, along with Democratic leaders in Los Angeles, San Francisco, and Honolulu, now find themselves on the same side as Arizona Republican lawmakers who are also seeking to tackle homelessness in public spaces. From Gavin Newsom, California has invested billions to address homelessness, but rulings from the bench have tied the hands of the state and local governments to address this issue. The Supreme Court can now correct course and end costly delays from lawsuits that have plagued our efforts to clear encampments and deliver services to those in need. Read here, Kelsey Corcoran of the Institute for Constitutional Advocacy and Protection at Georgetown University Law Center told the justices in a court filing on behalf of the homeless individuals that officials are still permitted to clear encampments on public property, but have chosen not to for political reasons. The whole crux of this issue is that Democrats and Republicans alike are trying to use homelessness and how bad it's gotten and how bad it is as a talking point, especially because it's an election year. They're talking about how encampments set up by homeless people are dangerous and how they're a public health issue. And the conversation about encampments by homeless people is a different conversation. But read this again if you'd like. There's nothing stopping them from clearing the encampments. And in a lot of places in America, I know, for example, like in Seattle, they do a lot of clearing of encampments. Democrats don't like homeless people. Republicans don't like homeless people. Most people don't like homeless people because no one wants to be homeless. Which is an interesting reaction to the issue of homelessness, but that is yet another conversation. Anyway, Republicans and Democrats are trying to use this as an excuse to make it even easier to discriminate against homeless and unhoused people. Let me ask you a question. If it's illegal for people to sleep in public spaces, because I'm sure when inevitably this gets heard in April, Supreme Court rules that it's not unconstitutional to bar people from sleeping in public space. I'm sure the wording of this law is not going to be written to make it so that it is exclusively for homeless people, because how would you do that? Not even talking about how bad this is going to be for homeless people, because it is going to be terrible for them, because where else will they go? But also think about simple things like camping or car camping. People that like to do that stuff. It's going to be harder to do that. This is also probably going to be used as an excuse to up police presence in a lot of different areas, because they're probably going to be checking for people to make sure they're not sleeping in public spaces. Like, the implications of this case are pretty huge. Because there are a lot of other very heinous things happening in the world, stuff like this is kind of being swept under the rug. Just wanted to bring this to your attention. From what I know, there's not much that we can really do at this point. But again, the case is supposed to be heard sometime in April, and we're expecting a decision sometime in the summer, around June.
Wait, you say what? You are Hawaiian. You're from Hawaii? I'm from Hawaii. I'm not Hawaiian.
People in that comment section are so annoying because he is literally explaining how he is from Hawaii, but he's not Hawaiian. And they're in the comments like, well, guess what? I'm from California, so I'm Californian. If you're from Texas, you're Texan. So you being from Hawaii, you're Hawaiian, buddy. You're really telling this man what he is? And I know he explained it, but I'm going to go more in depth. You being from Hawaii and you being Hawaiian are two very different things, because Hawaiian is an ethnicity. It's like being Native American. And if you're not Kanaka Maoli or Native Hawaiian, but you live in Hawaii, people usually just call you Hawaii residents or local. When he's talking about being Polynesian, he's talking about being part of one of the three sections that the Pacific Ocean was split up as: Micronesia, Melanesia, and Polynesia. Micronesia literally just means small islands. Melanesia means melanated islands, and Polynesia means a lot of islands. The Polynesian Triangle is from Hawaii to Aotearoa or New Zealand, and then Rapa Nui or Easter Island. If you are native to any of the Pacific Islands within the Polynesian Triangle, so like Samoa, Tahiti, you are Polynesian. Chamorros, Palauans, Chukis, they're all part of Micronesia because all their islands are in Micronesia. And it's the same thing with like Fijians, Papua New Guineans with Melanesia. If you're a native to any of those islands, you are Polynesian, Micronesian, Melanesian, respectively. But all together, it makes you Pacific Islander. Does that make sense? I think it makes sense. It makes sense in my head, so it makes sense, you know what I mean? There's a reason you don't see people in New Zealand or Aotearoa claiming that they're native, because the natives there take it very seriously. That's why they're called Kiwis. Kiwis are to New Zealand what like local residents are to Hawaii if you're not native. And before you guys come for me for my pronunciation of Hawaii, that is literally how you pronounce it. You guys pronounce it however you want to pronounce it, but I'm going to pronounce it correctly. And if you have any questions, I have multiple videos on that.